Started my first company with $1,000 in a pickup truck, and along the way I was able to make the transformation from a landscape technician to a landscape business person.
That's when I first met Ken. Started in the field, eventually moved to a management position.
And I was able to sell landscape techniques to TruGreen during the roll-up of 1998.
I left TruGreen to go to work for Scapes. It was a company that Ken Thomas had bought, and I played a role in helping to develop a lot of the processes and developing people as well. In a little under 6 years, it went from $4 million to $17 million.
Over all those years of experience, Ben had worked in my company, was a pivotal part in helping us build the internal processes and procedures and policies that helped us to be successful.
In our industry, nobody's really got patents or copyrights. What they've got is people and processes, and the best people and the best processes win.
So the way we start our engagements with clients is typically with an assessment. We'll go in, we'll work with a business owner, we'll help them to determine where they are on the life cycle curve of a business. And then we come alongside and actually support them for a period of time and get the traction that we need and sustainable change takes place.
It's awesome to see the change, see the transformation, see the professionalism grow, the profits grow, the people grow, and all of a sudden, the sky's the limit. That's cool.
Well, they don't just learn, they act on what they learn. That creates experience, and experience creates wisdom. Hi, I'm Ken Thomas.
And I'm Ben Gandy.
And we're the founders of Envisor Consulting. We created Envisor Consulting to help business owners remove the obstacles in order to reach their full potential.
One way we do this is by offering executive management training seminars.
We share our knowledge through a series of lectures, discussions, breakout groups, and much more.
Because we want to provide you with practical and simple tools and tactics that will put your managers in the best position to succeed.
Hello everyone, I'm Ken Thomas and this is my partner Ben Gandy.
Hey Ken.
Hey Ben. We're with Envisor Consulting. We're excited you're here today. We're in the middle of a webinar series that is featuring our Green Dot operating system. And today's webinar is focused on strategic planning for your company or building a roadmap to your success.
Right, right.
To get started, we'd like to explain a little bit about Green Dot and the operating system and how it came to be. Ben and I have been in the business many years, and we've had the opportunity to operate and grow successful companies, and through our consulting, we've been able to look inside and under the hood of some of the finest landscape companies in the country, really in the world. And through that time, we've been able to identify a set of best practices, a set of common initiatives that these companies have adopted that have made them successful. And we call that set of best practices the Green Dot operating system. Green Dot is a formula for success, if you will. And Ben and I have kind of codified it and tried to make it simple to the industry. Green Dot is a combination of business philosophy, systems, standard operating procedures, information systems and tools, and a set of key metrics or key performance indicators that all come together to help an organization to rise to the occasion and become mature. Without an understanding of what it takes to actually build an organization, too many companies get stuck along the way. This particular graphic we came up with to kind of illustrate the building components of successful companies. We believe that if you take the roof off of any company, big or small, you're going to have some level of these components being visible and being utilized within the organization. But in successful companies, in larger organizations, in mature organizations, they've actually fully matured these building blocks, these individual pieces of the organization. They realize that if they don't look at the organization holistically, they can never really fully leverage their resources in capital and people and equipment. So it's important to understand the big picture first. To explain the slide a little bit, across the top, we've got a key set of kind of executive initiatives or building blocks that need to be mastered. The first is the mission and values of your organization. Who are you? What's your identity? What's your culture? How do you want to be known to your customers and to your employees? Moving across to the right, you got to have a vision. You got to know where you're going as an organization, clearly define what's your picture of success, what's your bullseye, and it changes as a small organization to a large organization. Once you know where you're going and you know where you are, you got to build a roadmap. You got to build a strategy to take the organization in that direction. And in order to actually implement that strategy, you got to have the right structure. The owner needs to know what he's doing. You got to have the right org chart. You got to have the right people on the bus in the right seat. It's not easy. People can be difficult at times. But understanding the boxes is a big part of understanding the structure and the people. And finally, over to the right, you got to understand the financial plan. If you've got a great mission, if you've got a compelling vision, and you have a good strategy, you're going to have to be able to finance that somehow. And that comes through the financial acumen and building a successful or an effective operational budget.
That's right, Ken. And then, following that, you really have to have a business process for how you do business that's defined and that's understood across the organization. If not, then as you grow your business, as you try to scale it, it just becomes more and more chaotic. And we've realized that you can define and organize that workflow through the sales flow, right? That you start any job with a lead, understanding what you do and what you don't do. And then following that, there's scope development or design development, right? And then there's estimating, and there's a lot of ways to do estimating wrong, and there's very few ways to do it right. And then there's a sold phase of business, and then it goes from sold to work in progress, and then finally job closeout. And in each one of those phases, production has a responsibility, sales has a responsibility, and administration has a responsibility. And if they're clearly defined, then you can flow work through the organization from phase to phase and keep stacking up more and more sales in that organization, scale the organization in a structured way. If they're not clearly defined, more work just means more chaos, right?
Right. And our industry in particular spends a lot of time in this piece of the business and trying to get work done, or to get work sold and get work done. And small business owners,
wear a lot of hats. So they're handling many of these phases all by themselves, and there's not a lot of handoff, so there's not a lot of confusion. But you can only do so much by yourself. So as the company grows, the business owners and the leaders need to figure out how to hand off the different phases of the sale effectively through standard operating procedures and strong discipline in order to leverage the organization. You know, the bottom row of our graphic really speaks to the two components: selling work, managing customers, and then getting work done. To the far left on the bottom is commercial business development or even residential business development in general. What's your plan? How are you going to implement it? How are you going to grow the company? How can you ensure that you're going to hit your sales numbers? And then secondly, once you win the business, how do you take care of your client? What's your client relationship plan? You know, and how do we ensure that we're delivering the highest level of customer experience on a day-to-day basis and retaining those customers?
That's it. And ultimately, obviously, you got to get the work done as well, right? And that's one of the other inputs to that is having development of expertise and capabilities around planning and logistics. You know, I've often said you make a lot of your money before you ever get to the job. So it's planning, being good at that. Understanding lean principles so you can leverage your productivity, field leadership, and understanding how to be effective with that. And then finally, you've got to have key performance indicators, metrics in place to keep everything on track and hold yourself accountable.
That's right. So the Green Dot system, again, it's a comprehensive set of building blocks that enable business owners and consultants to be able to identify the gaps in the organizational development and then put plans in place to fill those gaps.
That's it. Yeah. You know, I really believe, Ken, that our development and codification of all these ideas has given us an anchor point that's allowed us to prioritize and sequence the basic building blocks, the components of organizational development. And we've been able to associate content with each one of those building blocks that's teachable so that we can develop that within organizations and help owners, help businesses, help leaders grow and scale their organizations and achieve their vision. You know, 98% of all the landscape companies in the United States never really get past $2 million. And we believe that, you know, not having clarity into the components of organizational development is a big part of that.
That's right.
We work with a lot of organizations that are considerably larger than that, but they get stuck as well, right?
They do.
And it's the same root cause. It goes back to organizational development. What will it take, development inside the organization to move past and ultimately achieve your vision?
Absolutely, and again, if you spend all of your time and your resources and your energy in just getting work done, it's hard to ever focus on the more executive level building components and really look to the future and be the kind of leader you need for your organization.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
So digging into strategy a little bit, or strategic planning, you know, basically strategy is a means to an end. You know, it's a roadmap to success. We've talked in previous webinars about the importance of creating vision and creating your picture of success, creating your destination. It's a multifaceted plan or multifaceted vision, but to get there, you got to have a specific strategy, and it's got to be clearly laid out and communicated to the rest of the team. When you have strategy, you have the ability to basically operate with strategic management. You know, not fly by the seat of your pants management or emotional management, but strategic management. When there's a plan in place and it's clearly articulated, people can be held accountable to the goal because they helped create it.
That's right.
And they believe in it just as well as we do.
Right.
So.
Right. Strategic planning, it takes, you know, there's specificity to it, right? In terms of the time frames, the participants, the pre-work that goes into those meetings, right?
Yeah.
You got to come to those meetings with an open mind, right?
Yeah, when you think about how do you get ready to develop a strategic plan, where do you get started? To your point, there's some criteria that need to be developed. Number one, what is the time frame for developing a strategic plan? Does it take 6 months? Does it take 30 days? Is it a 2-day process? You know, what time of year is best to actually be able to engage, free your mind up, create the kind of brilliant margin that you need to think about something as important as strategy. You know, who needs to be at a strategic planning session?
Right.
Who in your organization, what leadership level do you need representation from the different service lines? But it's important to try to understand who is going to need to come together to give us the best opportunity to craft the strategic plan. There's a certain amount of pre-work that needs to be thought out before you get to the table to start talking about strategy. You need some reference points as it relates to revenue and profitability and customer analysis and structural org chart analysis. So somebody has to collect a certain amount of base data that we can use in our strategic planning to think about the future.
Right.
As you mentioned, you got to have an open mind. We may be changing course.
Yeah.
You know, and ask some of the strategy may be very difficult to actually enforce or to engage in.
Yeah.
And finally, you know, it's probably wise to consider hiring a facilitator for that exercise, especially if you've never done it before. What do you think a facilitator helps with?
Well, I think that having a facilitator present can just aid in communication. I think that considering history and dynamics of some teams, there may be some teams where there's brilliant people that are just not speaking up. That you know, a facilitator may be able to flesh out their ideas. There may be people in the organization that are just not able to hear one another very well, right? And I think that a facilitator can, in a professional way, in a respectful way, help people to speak, help people to hear, clarify points, write things down. Hopefully keep the meetings on track, because you're going to end up talking about a lot of things and you need to get to an end point. You will inevitably end up down some rabbit holes that are really not germane to getting to a strategic plan. And in a professional, respectful way, somebody needs to get those discussions back on track.
That's right. That's right. And we've been fortunate to be able to work with quite a few companies in developing the strategic plan. And it's not a plug for Envisor, but we certainly have seen enough strategy in our industry to at least help facilitate and form a little bit of a catalyst in getting that strategic plan built.
That's right.
Yeah, to your point. You know, there's really 4 other key parts to a strategic plan development. You know, the first is to determine where are you currently,
right,
you know, in this life cycle curve. If this is where you want to go and we're going to build a plan to get there, you got to figure out where you are. You know, you can't build a plan to get to Orlando if you don't know where you're starting, right? So you got to have a plan. You got to know where you are in relation to your target. You need to start with the big picture. You need to define, you know, the long-term strategy first, a 3 to 5 to 10-year plan. You know, what's it going to take to get this thing going? There are some big picture, big-time strategic initiatives that need to get started, but they're going to take years to actually implement. Next, you really need to build your tactical plan. Tactical plans are really short-term and mid-term goals or initiatives that get you started on this path or on this, you know, road to success or to your vision. In creating those short-term goals, you need to be able to identify what they are, what's the priority. You need to be able to assign accountability to the members on your team to actually be responsible for achieving those short-term goals. We need some measurements that will help us to remember or to see or measure if we're on track, some key performance indicators. And we need, on the short-term level, we need a 1-year budget that supports this short-term tactical plan. We've got long-term strategic, this is short-term tactical, right?
Right.
And then we need to manage the performance of the strategic plan. We need to roll it out. You know, a lot of times when we build a strategic plan, we talk about how are we going to communicate this plan to the rest of the team. Why are they going to be interested in it? You know, we need to think about, here's the plan that we've come up with. Why are they going to like it, or what will their obstacles be?
Right.
Because a lot of times with a strategic plan, there is a change initiative that goes along with it. There may be a lot of change initiative. It may be dramatic change. So managing the plan starts with rolling out the plan, communicating it clearly, and then measuring it on a regular basis to make sure we're still on track.
Yes.
And that's an excellent role for the CEO of an organization. Once the plan is in place, it's the CEO and the leader's job to make sure we stay on track.
That's right.
So.
Yeah. huge leadership component with that.
Yes.
So there must be, with strategic plan building, there's got to be multi-year targets. Where do we want to be in 3 years, 5 years, right? And we set that as part of our vision, but then the strategic plan is, okay, if we want to be there in 5 years, what do we have to do this year, right,
Yeah.
to set us up to get there in 5 years?
That's right.
What do we have to do this quarter to set us up to get to our goals this year, to set us up to get to ultimately our vision,
Yep.
Down the road? What about the structure? If we have a vision for a certain organization 5 years from now, and we understand where we are today, then we can identify what positions will we need to fill, what capabilities, what resources will we have to bring in. We may find that we may identify that we need an account manager 9 months from now, and one walks into the door tomorrow. But if we know that we're going to need them anyway,
Right.
they're hard to find.
That's
we might
right.
just go ahead and hire them anyway. If it's 2 years away, maybe not, right? But if we've built a good strategic plan, then you kind of understand that, and you can take advantage opportunistically of those situations that they arise. You need to understand the systems and processes. You may recognize in your strategic planning that you need an EPR, an enterprise system, or upgrade your estimating system or your job closeout system, or whatever that may be. Those are big initiatives.
They are.
Right?
Yep.
But strategic planning is when you identify those and who's going to be responsible and what your timeframes are and what your budgets are to achieve all that. You need to understand the key performance indicators that are going to keep you on track. Where does the data come from? Who accumulates it? How often does it get updated? Who does it get distributed to? And then when we read that data, what does it mean? How do we react to that?
That's right. That's right.
And understand the timelines that are associated with that strategic plan. All those are leadership responsibilities.
That's right. And again, you can call it strategy management, but it's strategic management.
It is.
And it's managing a plan instead of managing people. We still need to manage people, but somebody's got to manage the plan.
That's right.
And that's the power that comes along with strategic planning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have been big fans of the book Traction.
Mm-hmm.
It's been popular in our industry, and Gino Wickman is just a great author. He makes so many good points in there. But one of the things that Gino introduced to us was the VTO, or the Vision Traction Organizer. And it's a simple 2-page document. And as we talk about the executive building blocks of a company, and we think about mission, vision, values, strategy, it's really important to figure out where can we house this information in a way that's simple, easily accessible, easy to understand, and easy to modify and update as our company grows and as the strategy moves forward.
Right.
In this 2-page document, on page 1, we have a kind of an overview of the company that clearly defines our 5 to 10 year plan in terms of revenue, service lines, profitability, culture. It talks clearly and outlines clearly our core values, our mission, also any of our unique selling points that we've identified as an organization. It's a great picture of who we are today and where we want to be in the future. And it's all right there, and it's very clearly documented. Page 2 is more of the 1-year, midterm, short-term planning, a 12-month guide to success, if you will. It starts with what's our revenue goal and our profit goal. What are the main rocks, as they call them? What are the biggest things we need to do this year? What are our biggest objectives by the end of the year? And then quarterly, how do we prioritize those objectives and assign accountability to them? So it's a great tool, it's a great document. We use it all over the country in strategic planning. If you haven't read the book Traction, we should have wrote it, but we didn't, but it's a great book, and it's worth checking into.
That's right, because it clearly defines the difference between the working on the business activities and the working in the business activity. And a lot of our careers will be spent working in the business, but strategic planning is all about working on the business, contributing to the organizational development of the business so that ultimately, we carry it to the next level.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Ken, we've worked all over the country, and one of the great markets out there is New Orleans, or New Orleans if you're from there, right? And the Mullen Company, Mullen Landscapes is one of the leading companies in that market, and we've had the privilege of working with Chase Mullen, the leader of that organization. Chase, welcome to the Envisor Studios. Great to have you with us today. Look forward to discussing with you strategic planning and getting your thoughts on that this morning.
Hey, Chase.
Hey, glad to be here with y'all, Ken and Ben. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. What's going on in New Orleans today?
It's extra hot. It's not raining for a change this summer, but now we're under a heat advisory. So
right, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. Such is life in the summer down south.
That's right. Chase, you've done a great job with strategic planning with your team. You want to talk us through that just a little bit, your reflections on that?
So in the landscape industry, I think that we all tend to run pretty hard. And another opportunity that those off-site strategic planning meetings give us is the ability to bond as a team, right? Where our leadership team, we're together, we're kind of out of the weeds in the day-to-day fire drills and other things that we deal with when we're at the office and in the field. So we tend to bond with each other over dinner, over drinks after dinner, depending on where we have these offsite meetings. Maybe there's a fire and we'll sit by the fire, and we'll play board games sometimes and card games, things of that nature. But it just allows us to really get to know one another and to connect with each other. Another thing that we're doing a little bit differently this year is we're also doing some divisional strategic planning meetings. We have some just incredible mid-level managers, and they haven't been really involved in the high-level strategic planning the last 4 years or so. And so we want to give them the opportunity to be involved as well. And so we're going to have those kind of breakout sessions throughout the year, again, to make sure that kind of everybody on the boat is all rowing in the same direction, that we're all, aligned in where we're trying to go with this thing. So
I think that's perfect. I think that's great. You've done a good job in really kind of identifying the obstacles to fulfilling your vision, right? In those strategic planning meetings, what capabilities do we need to develop? What resources do we need to find? What timelines do we need to put in place? Those types of things, that's the time when you identify those things so that everybody can be aligned. You've done a good job with that.
Thank you. And, we pay attention to those things. Typically our offsite meetings we hold in the fall. And we pay attention to those things that come from the meetings for the rest of the year, right? We develop basically like a sheet of rocks, and we continue to go through that sheet weekly for us. And without that time away, when would we make the time to, to develop that list of things that we needed, like we said, the obstacles, and also the advantages that we have, right? We want to pay attention to what advantages we have and make sure that we're kind of maximizing them.
But Chase, how do you prepare for a strategic planning getaway? I mean, what kind of information do you need so that you're able to reference, where you are against where you want to go?
Yeah, so obviously we need a lot of financial information, and what we've developed, I guess, over years of doing this is we'll bring all the way down to the most granular level, the monthly P&L level. But we'll also pull some KPIs that are just easier to access. Then what we have is we have a vision traction organizer. Is that kind of document where we keep everything that we're pulling out of each strategic planning session and what we're reviewing, like I said, in those weekly meetings throughout the year. So we'll bring that from the previous year, and we kind of reflect on, what rocks we've completed, if there are any that maybe need to be polished or refined. Another really big thing that's just been incredible for us with strategic planning is the organizational chart, right? So with some of those kind of high level financials, let's just say for next year, if we're trying to increase, our revenue by 10% in the maintenance department, we can look at, our current management structure, what do we need to accommodate that 10% increase? And that's the time where we kind of put that all together, develop that plan, and, parts of that plan will be refined during the actual budgeting process. But so I would say, like I said, financial information, the vision traction vision traction organizer, sorry, and the organizational chart are three of the biggest things.
Yes.
That's perfect, right? Because you got to have the people in place, the staff in place to execute on your vision. You got to understand financially where you're at. You got to time bound it all and figure out, what are the waypoints that we need to hit. That's the essence of strategic planning. And you made a comment somewhat offhandedly, but if we don't do that, if we don't take the time to do that, when will we? And the answer is never, right? You're just going to get sucked into all the busyness of the business. You carve out that time intentionally.
Correct. And not to try to plug Aspire, but we're on Aspire, and with a program like Aspire 2, we have cloud access, and we can pull reports pretty quickly while we're in that 2-day meeting. So if there's something, if we're trying to run, let's just say like a maintenance account analysis or something like, something that we can do kind of off the cuff, generate that report and analyze it as a group without doing too much work. So, there's certainly other information that we're pulling along the way. Certainly I would hope that anybody doing this, if they don't have cloud-based access to information, they probably need to put a little bit more together than what I mentioned.
Yeah, I think it's right. That's a good point.
So you spend all the time with your group of leaders coming up with, the formula for success and the bullseye. How do you make that real, to the rest of the organization? How do you create the buy-in beyond just the group that's getting together?
I like that. Well, and don't forget with the bullseye too, and from that strategic planning meeting, we can also determine who does what. Right? If nobody's, if somebody's not accountable, then no one's accountable. But that's a great question, Ken. So again, as a company grows larger, communication becomes more difficult. And so how do you communicate the takeaways from that meeting to the rest of the team is by having another meeting, right? A team-wide. We call it our spring kickoff every year. We do 2 separate kickoffs. We do one for our office and field management team, and then one for our field. The field is, slightly less, I guess, granular on like the financial end, and we also, the field, we have a translator. But anyway, those 2 spring kickoff meetings are where we kind of unroll the plan for the year and really bring the whole team together as a group and make sure that everybody's aligned and in the know on, what we're all thinking.
That's awesome, because it's hard. You made a great point. Communication is hard, and it gets harder and harder the bigger you get. So you're intentional about understanding that. It's going to be an obstacle, so let's facilitate a way to get over it.
Good word, Ben, intentional. And I think, like strategic planning, that's the thing, is it's recognizing the importance of making the time to be intentional, to do the things that drive the business forward and bring everybody together so that they're all aligned and driving the business in the direction that, like me as the owner, or we as the leadership team wanted to go.
That's great. I consider you a visionary leader. You like to be able to point the picture of where we're going and lead the way. When you have a strategic plan, you also are able to be a strategic manager, and your team can provide strategic management. It takes some of the emotion out of what we're doing every day. Here's the strategy. You all agree with it. Now let's go do it. Just that simple, or should be.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it kind of objective. Yeah. Correct.
It does. And I think that it's easy for me as the visionary leader, right? If I'm in an environment where it's not intentional and I'm spitballing ideas and maybe they make a lot of sense in my head, but we're not really like organizing the information and assigning, points of accountability and who does what, and, coming together as a group to agree upon it. It's easy, I think, for it to get lost in translation, right? And get lost like in the busyness and, like I said, the fire drills, and the other things that we deal with. And then all of a sudden, what I thought was this epiphany of an idea that everybody was going to execute on, like it doesn't happen. So to like use your word, Ben, to intentionally have these opportunities to define how it happens and make sure that everybody else is in agreement with it happening has been like really instrumental, I think, in our success and our ability to kind of grow from that like adolescent stage company up into a real like leadership driven, business.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
It's made all the difference.
Yeah, we've certainly enjoyed working with you, and can't tell you how much we appreciate you being here with us today and giving us your insights on strategic planning. Thank you.
Excellent
I enjoy
commentary.
I mean, I wouldn't be here if I wouldn't have learned what I've learned from you guys. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good to speak to Chase.
Yeah. So Ben, we've talked about strategy. We've talked about the strategic planning process. Once we've kind of developed the plan, what are the obstacles that we typically run into when trying to actually implement the plan?
Ken, that's a good question. So there will be obstacles, so you might as well plan for them, right? One of the first obstacles that we will always run into is apathy. It is one of the great enemies of success in any enterprise is apathy. It is absolutely leadership's job to combat apathy, and you've got to do that by having a compelling culture, a compelling vision, a unifying mission, and a set of values that make the execution on the strategic plan exciting and inspirational. And you got to have accountability, right?
Yeah.
And that sits squarely in the hands of leadership. You got to understand also that there's going to be resistance to change. Change creates a certain amount of stress. People are naturally, natively somewhat stress averse and therefore change averse. Leadership has to be empathetic to that. Change isn't always easy. Nevertheless, you got to beat the drum if you're in the leadership seat, and you got to demand accountability in terms of change. Help people, support people, but ultimately, nobody grows, nobody matures, no organization gets anywhere without a certain amount of change.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
You got to understand sometimes that there's obstacles that just involve lack of resources. There may be capabilities, equipment, systems, money, authority. If that's the case, then you need a certain amount of transparency and honesty in an organization just to realize that, because the people that are trying to execute on the strategy, it may not be their fault. It comes down to leadership, to help those people out. If there are resources that are lacking,
that's right,
provide them.
Right? Yeah.
Right. And finally, morale. And any good leader understands the importance of good morale to moving a strategic plan forward and developing your organization. The quality of your morale is ultimately a reflection of leadership.
That's true. That's
right.
True. Yep.
So if it's poor, fix it, right? If it's poor. There are times when you may need to let your foot off the gas and rally the troops and appreciate people. And there are times when you put your foot on the gas, but that's one of the nuances of being a great leader.
Yeah, and that's something that Chase mentioned when we were talking to him about strategy and just the idea that people aren't always up for the next big thing, and if they're already kind of beat up and tired, and you say, hey, here's a whole new plan. Yeah. Not sure I'm ready to buy in. You got to create that win-win, and you got to be able to communicate to the entire team why this is good for them. If they buy in, then they can handle a little more pain in the change, I guess, if that makes any sense. But,
sure.
So they got to believe.
Yeah.
Got to believe in it.
Yeah.
That's a good part of the whole process of strategic planning. If we've done a good job at mission, vision, values, then hopefully we've set that ideology that we've been talking about with the organization, and they're ready now for a plan.
Yeah, how are we going to get there?
Yeah, how are we going to get out of here and get somewhere better?
Right.
Right? That's exciting too.
Right.
So.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, it's been great. We're so glad that you joined us today for this webinar on strategic planning. It's such a big part of any business.
It's huge.
Ben and I both love strategy. If you don't have a strategy, then you're just wandering around, and it's very disheartening at times. And it's very hard to be a strategic manager if every shiny lure that comes by becomes a new path. So a good strategic plan keeps you on track.
Ken, next time what are we going to talk about?
Next time, I think we're talking about structure.
We're going to talk about structure in our next webinar. We look forward to having everybody join us. We really appreciate you joining us today for this webinar. Thank you. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, on the web. You can find a lot of our content on Envisor Academy.
Yes.
And stay tuned to your inbox and to social media channels for our next webinar on structure. And we will see you then.
Thanks so much. Take care.